What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today, we have the first official injury report of the week for the Lions and Packers. It's another battle for first place in the NFC North, so let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to our video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're back with another latest news video. We got a few things to touch on today. We'll try to keep this thing short and sweet because we're also going to be live tonight over there on the NFC North Roundtable. So check us out because we're going to be talking about last week's games specifically and talking about that blowout win over the Titans. But before we get into any of that, this video is being brought to you by BetUS. So use that promo code YouTube150 to get a 150% deposit match on your first deposit up to $2,000 and a 125% deposit match on your next two deposits. NFL schedule is laid out here. These are the odds as of the time of recording. Of course, this is subject to change, so go make an account so you can see those lines change and place some bets. But the lines are up for week 9, and as you can see, the Lions currently are 3 to 3.5 point favorites depending on when you're seeing it. That's kind of the range that the Lions are in. Some of that could definitely change depending on what the status is here with the quarterback situation. Malik Willis, we're about to talk about that because Jordan Love is definitely not being counted out for this game. But let me know in the comments which line outside of that one catches your eye for this week. To me, the Jacksonville one is very interesting. I think that could be a sneaky upset pick. I think they did some good things last week, and if they could just pass protect a little bit, that could be an interesting game. But also, to me, that Cleveland Chargers game. The Chargers are favored. It's basically a pick 'em, and the Cleveland Browns are at home. I'm going to roll with the Browns to get back-to-back wins. I love me some Jim Harbaugh, but I'm going to take the Browns this week. So that'd be the one that I like. That, again, is BetUS YouTube 150. That is the promo code. Check them out. Now let's get to today's video. I'm going to dive into both the Packers and the Lions side of the injury report, but before we get to that, quick little news update on the trade side of things. We don't have any news for the Lions making a trade as of now, but there was a little report put out there. There's a lot of buzz currently around edge rusher Za'Darius Smith. He is a hot name on the market, which I think is kind of expected. We've heard this name for weeks now, but it's also popping up for other teams as well. Anybody that has an interest in an edge rusher, he's kind of standing out as like, yeah, he might be the best player available that's actually legitimately available, but also financially he makes a ton of sense because if you acquire him, according to Over the Cap, you're looking at just over $1 million in a cap at this season and just over $4 million next season. So I get him for a couple of years under contract. He's been consistently productive. He's also consistently on the field. So you have a lot of things working in the favor of Za'Darius Smith. And for the Browns side of things, apparently they're looking for a good day 3 pick. Now, it doesn't surprise me that it would be a day 3 pick, and that's kind of what we talked about when we initially did that video. If you didn't see it, weeks ago, we did a video on Za'Darius Smith. He was the second player that we talked about, and I feel like we were ahead of all the kind of the news and rumors and buzz. But that's because if you looked at the Browns, they were bad at the time, and it was like, Myles Garrett's probably not realistic. But this other guy, he's already been in the division. He's been with 2 teams in the division. Might make some sense. And Za'Darius Smith, apparently the Browns are looking for a good day 3 pick. But the interesting thing about this, and why the Browns could very much so be eager if they get like a 4th round pick in return, is because initially to acquire Za'Darius Smith from the Minnesota Vikings, it was a day 3 pick swap where they basically gave up 2 5th round picks in exchange for Za'Darius Smith, a 6th round pick, and a 7th round pick. So in some ways, they could see potentially any kind of 4th round pick as an upgrade off of what they actually originally gave to get Za'Darius Smith. And if you look at the Lions and you look at what they have draft capital wise, they don't have a 3rd round pick this upcoming year. They do have 1 4th round pick, which is currently projected at like 132 back end of the 4th round because the Lions are in the NFL record wise right now. So they'd be at the very back end of the 4th round. And if you look at what the Lions have gotten out of kind of that 4th round pick, say it took a 4th round pick, I'm not saying it will, but say they want to give up their 4th round pick. And I'd honestly be a little bit surprised. I think the Lions would probably prefer like, hey, we'll try to give them like a 5th round and then a future pick on top of that if they try to make a swing like that. I think the trade makes a ton of sense. I think he kind of replaces a lot of what Davenport brought to the table. But at the same time, again, you get reliability there. You kind of know what you're going to get production-wise. You know the way that he plays, and you get a little stability, whereas next season, he'd be a nice partner with Hutchinson. After locking up Aleem McNeil, your defensive line would pretty much be completely locked in. DJ Reader's under contract. You'd have the same guys going in the next season. You look at what the Lions got last year in the 4th round. It was Sione Vaki with pick number 132. And recently, a lot of their 4th round picks are guys in that range because they haven't always had 4th round picks, have been guys that have more so been kind of trending towards the future and what they could become, and we don't really know right now. Like, for example, they give up a future 3rd round pick for Giovanni Manu, who was a 4th round pick in this last year's draft. You have Sione Vaki, who's like right now, running back 4. After Monty's extension, at very most, he might work up to running back 3, but he's also just kind of a special teams piece for the Lions as well. He's got a few snaps at fullback, but that's really it for the Lions. You also have Colby Sorsel, though that was a 5th-round pick, as well as James Mitchell, because we didn't have 4th-round picks in those years. And then you have to go back to the first draft class with Brad Holmes, where he had a couple of early 4th-round picks, where he flipped that into Amon-Ra St. Brown and traded up to go get Derek Barnes. 2 guys that are now starters. St. Brown, one of the best in football. That's like one of those gems that you just hit on there. And then Derek Barnes, where it took time. It wasn't immediate. He was on the field, but it took time. He's carved out a role as a sandbacker for the Lions, and now he's playing his best football, unfortunately, though he's hurt right now. So a lot of these picks, really outside of St. Brown, even St. Brown was the end of the first year, it's taken time. They're either going to be hopefully big parts of this team in the future, or it took time for them to become that player. And again, those ones that really hit that we know of so far were much earlier in the 4th round for the Lions. But I do think it's also important to put in perspective that, hey, you did give up a 3rd-round pick for a future potential offensive tackle. Now, we don't know that it's going to become that. What you're hoping for there is that, at best, he becomes your future at left tackle. That'd be excellent, even though you just gave David Decker's extension. So then maybe more likely he's your swing tackle, right? And that'd be ideal, even though Dan Skipper looked pretty good when he stepped in the last week. So, you have to kind of keep that in perspective and give up with these draft picks. But the value for the Lions in staying consistent and staying a team that's good year after year after year is what Brad Holmes' focus was coming in. Like, hey, we want to be a team that's good every year. We're not going to push all our chips in the middle of the table for one season. We got to be good every year. And the way that we do that is through the draft. So these picks that we had to use a 3rd-round pick to go get a tackle, hopefully is going to be valuable down the road, because even though he doesn't have a role right now, in the future, having a really nice swing tackle, or potentially a guy that does become your starting tackle, but, we'll have to see how that plays out, that could be incredibly valuable. It's just not there right now. And that's kind of similar to Colby Sorsel or Sione Vaki and what they could be down the road. But based on just those returns alone, I think if you said that you gave up a 4th-round pick and it was towards the end of the round for Za'Darius Smith, I would say that's a worthwhile trade. It's just then also putting into the aspect that the Lions don't have a 3rd-round pick, and you'd have a massive gap there in next year's draft with already being towards the back end of the 1st and 2nd round. So I can see the Lions not wanting to give that 4th-round pick and instead want to give like a 5th and then trying to give something beyond potentially a little bit more to bring him in. Wonder if a team like Kansas City was potentially interested in Za'Darius and they got priced out of it, so they went with Uche for a 6th-round pick. You just wonder. Different style, but you just wonder. And we know that there's a lot of teams. Anybody that's interested in edge rusher, this could easily be everybody's top edge rusher on the board. That's like a legitimate trade target. Even Buffalo. I heard today Buffalo could be looking for an edge defender. So there's a lot of teams interested in pass rushers. They're hard to find. They're not just growing on trees. And a lot of these guys kind of feel like maybe you're making a lateral move, especially after what Muhammad showed us last week, where I don't think the Lions just want to make a move to make a move. They want to legitimately get an upgrade if they're going to give up a legitimate draft pick. That all being said, let's move into the injury report we have for Wednesday for both the Packers and the Lions. So we're actually going to start on the Packers side of things just because it's right here and they posted actually both sides. So shout out to the Packers for doing that. Lions only post the Lions side, but I see you, Packers. Rolling through this, first off, we have Jair Alexander listed with no participation. He did play in the last game for the Packers with a knee injury. Of course, this will be massive if he can't go. Now, we got to keep in mind it is Wednesday. You'll see on the Lions side of things, as Dan Campbell told us, like there was going to be some guys that he was going to hold out for kind of recovery reasons, and most teams kind of do that once we get to the middle part of the season. Jair is clearly their best cornerback, and for this team that when they go to nickel packages, brings in Eric Stokes to play wide corner, and when they're in base package, they put Nixon, who is typically their slot cornerback, out at wide corner. It feels like there's a little bit of a gap. Now, they are getting Corey Ballantyne back, who hasn't played a ton. He's like a 149 pass rating this year, but they are set to get him back to add a little bit more depth. But Jair is the best cornerback that they have, and there seems to be a little bit of a gap between the next best corner. So that's a massive one to keep an eye on, but it does sound like he's going to be good to go this weekend, even though he had no participation today. Corey Ballantyne, as I touched on, limited practice, so that's a positive swinging for them. You also have Kenny Clark, who now has a new injury on here with shoulder. He did play last week through the toe injury. He's done that, but now he's popped up with shoulder as well, though it's limited participation. I think he's one of the more underrated defensive linemen. He's especially a threatening piece off the backside of runs. What he does as the 3 technique, his ability to just create penetration and get into the backfield, you could have some success going directly at him. Behind on runs, that's where he becomes a big threat, and obviously what he could do as a pass rusher for a team that doesn't blitz a ridiculous amount, especially on early downs. Elton Jenkins, no participation today with a glute injury. Oh, you're going to see all these offensive linemen on here. It's important to keep in mind that last week, their starting offensive line was on the field between Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers at center, Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Those guys all listed with no participation participation, but they were also all on the field in their last game against Jacksonville on that final drive that they went down and got the field goal. So keep that in mind. The big one here, of course, is Jordan Love, who is listed with no participation, though apparently Jordan Love said today that it's realistic that he plays in this game. Now, we know backup will be Malik Willis, and we'll break that down when we get to the preview video. I've really just only dove into the Packers defense to this point. It changes their offense for sure, but it's realistic. He said that he plays in this upcoming game. He started this game. I believe he was 14 of 22. He had the interception where he kind of tried to like no-look the out route and it got undercut, but he also made some really nice throws up to that point. Keep an eye on if he's able to go this week, but it does sound like you should not count out Jordan Love this week whatsoever. A big one also is Quay Walker. Got through concussion protocol, full participation today. Last week, we saw McDuffie, we saw Edgerrin Cooper, but we also saw a lot more of Wilson in the game. You do get a guy like Walker back, we may see a lot less of Wilson. I think the linebacker position is one that you can definitely attack, but this adds a lot of boost to that position room, which feels like at times it could be a little bit of a weakness for them. Obviously, they fly around Cooper especially, but that being said, if you get Walker back, it definitely brings a huge boost to that positional group. Evan Williams also no participation. It's a big one to keep an eye on. He's played really well this season, and last week, Javon Bullard stepped in at safety, and this is something that popped up during the Jacksonville game. Bullard stepped in. He was attacked multiple times, was put into the action specifically in coverage. And if they didn't have Evan Williams, it'd lead to a trickle-down effect because now at that point, you're kind of forced to put Stokes into the game opposite of Jair so then Nixon can kick it to the slot versus being able to set Bullard into the slot when he's healthy and just leave Williams at safety. Now, it does sound like Williams is going to play in this game. It was a little bit of something that kind of popped up, but it sounds like he's going to be good for this week, which is huge for versatility reasons. Ever to me been like the best just straight matchup piece, and that's where he was a little bit of a tweener to me in college, Javon Bullard, that is. However, Evan Williams has played well. Xavier McKinney, who's leading the league in interceptions. And then you have Devontae Wyatt with limited participation with an ankle injury. And I did skip over Josh Jacobs, so let me hit on that. No participation today, but it also does sound like Josh Jacobs is going to be good to go. Jordan Love is considered day-to-day. Could be a game-time decision. It seems like they're going to give him the entire week. Now taken off of the injury report includes Nixon, the cornerback, Jaden Reed, the receiver, Christian Watson, the receiver, and also Colby Wooden, one of their backup interior defensive linemen. And they do tend to rotate a lot, so that's important for them. All right, moving on to the Lions side of things. We have a lot of no participation, but half of these are just rest. The only new ones really here are Taylor Decker with no participation due to chest injury. And also, if you go down, we have Malcolm Rodriguez, who we know is carted off. He's not going to play this weekend, but next weekend, the hope is that he could be back against the Texans. And then also Sione Vaki, who we just don't see a ton, but he's listed with knee, but he could be part of kind of that recovery of guys that are being held out today with that knee injury for no participation. Outside of that, though, it's a lot of rest, and it's Jared Goff listed with ankle, but it sounds like he's expected to be back at practice tomorrow, and he thinks he'll be okay. Obviously, this is massive. If he does not play, that would be completely game-changing. But I'm optimistic that, hey, recovery type of day we're at in the season. I hate that he's not getting reps maybe on Wednesday. That being said, though, we've seen this team. They do have a different defensive mind, so it's going to be a little bit different. But still early downs, a lot of single high, a lot of cover three, a lot of cover one of those spots. Third downs, mix between man, mix between Tampa 2. So I don't think it's like overly exotic, but what you do see is a lot of simulated pressure, and you definitely get safety movement. So those are the main things. And when they go to man, you don't always know who's matched up. That can be one of the biggest things is they like to utilize the versatility, safety stepping down to those man coverage roles. So it stinks that he's not getting that practice. However, we are familiar with the personnel, so hopefully that leads to a benefit, and hopefully he's back to practice on Thursday, at least in limited participation. Another big one here is Josh Paschal, who is TBD to play this weekend. We're not just sure. Dan Campbell just said to be determined if he's going to play this weekend. We're not sure yet, but he told us that he wasn't going to practice today. Same with Malcolm. However, the other one that's big here to me going to be Broderick Martin. For the first time, we see him on a list, really, and that's because he has now activated his 21-day window, and for him to come back full participation is massive. Kind of forgot about the guy a little bit. When we had the initial injury to Cal Petco, I was like, wait a minute, Broderick's, he's on IR. I forgot this guy was on IR. Well, today, he's listed with full participation, knee injury, and he's opened that 21-day window. It'd be great to get him back. In the meantime, we've seen guys like Pat O'Connor step up for us a little bit, but anytime you get depth back and get your pure nose tackle back to back up a guy like DJ Reader and Aleem, who's kind of had a play into that role a little bit, and you kick Levi inside, it'd be great. I'm not even completely sure that when he's fully healthy that they'll go with him over what they've been doing with Pat O'Connor, but at least then it's on the table. So we'll see. Definitely want to get him healthy, so at least he's getting practice reps. That's ideal. We need this guy to improve, and just standing off to the side is not going to help us there. So full participation is good. Outside of that, it's just a lot of rest between the offensive lineman, the defensive lineman, and Kevin Zeitler. So that is your injury report for Wednesday for this game. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. It looks good. good. I don't think that I did. I'm going to leave it there. Check us out on the NFC North Roundtable. By the time we're seeing this, we're probably live. Thank you, Pride, for watching, or it's over, so check out the replay. Thank you, Pride, for watching. Shout out to BetUS, YouTube 150. That is the promo code, and I'm out.